Really got to try on that left-hand side. What happened?
But I've gone up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit to make this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Scrum of the Earth podcast, the weekly show that brings you news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more all about the world of rugby. As always, I'm David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it all over the globe. If you'd like to get in touch, I would love to hear from you. I'm on Blue Sky @ofscrum. I'm on Instagram at the Scrum of the Earth podcast, and you can always just drop a good old-fashioned email to thescrumoftheearth@gmail.com. Well, as you have no doubt deduced, by now this is not your regular weekly episode, but is in fact yet another sort of hybrid weekly / bonus episode. I couldn't be happier to welcome back for the first time in 2025. It's the one and only Rugby Julia. Julia, my friend, how the heck are you? It is so good to see you.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Happy 2025. I am doing just great. As we were talking right before you came on the air. I just finished a move. I'm exhausted. Luckily, not much is happening in rugby, and there's not a lot to talk about.
I'm sure we'll find something.
I'll figure something out.
By the way, is the move officially done? Are you like, there's no more boxes staring at you?
The boxes are out of the old house. And now they're staring at me in a new house.
But it's kind of like a gift day when you're like, oh, I have this. Like opening those boxes can be fun.
I was just remarking upon exactly that. You're absolutely right. And I am not complaining about the unpacking portion, especially after the packing portion. But no, it really is. You get to remember all of the wonderful things that you own that you forgot that you owned for usually years in my case. And I've found so many gifts I got myself.
Well, today, as we're talking, is Super Bowl Sunday. Are you currently, I don't know, broiling some wings or whipping up a dipping sauce of some kind?
I would like to just say, especially, my wife, huge fan of the pot. Just kidding. She doesn't watch rugby. Go Birds. Obviously, go Birds. In terms of what we're doing, good question. We're actually making taco nachos, which really just sounds like bullshit. That's not anything. I think it's just the innards. It's the innards of tacos, but it's going to be
deconstructed tacos. I see.
Deconstructed tacos. In that I like little bite things, and my wife likes tacos.
Well, traditionally, lots of eating today. Of course, lots of eating every day here in the United States. Out of curiosity, Julia, how much pizza is served in our country each day expressed in acres? Do you want to go 20 acres, 45 acres, or say 100 acres of pizza?
That's a really good question. But I feel like I've even seen that we call it a brain teaser here in America, pizza acreage. I'm going to go, because I'm like a weak person, I'm just going to go straight in the middle. I'm going to say 44, but I feel like I had read something about 20, but it just feels too small now.
It is 100 acres of pizza every
Good.
Single day. I feel like I personally am like three acres maybe.
Exactly. Our arteries are getting stronger every day.
If you don't, put in the time, they're not going to be able to perform when the big pizza comes.
That's what I was going to say. I'm really just, when the stuff is collecting on the walls, it's making the walls stronger.
Exactly. Well, I'm very gratified to see that you and your partner haven't been designated as terrorist organizations yet. At least not quite yet. Thankfully, that's not even what we're here to talk about. That would be a very different podcast and one I probably wouldn't listen to, if I'm honest. We are here to talk
a lot more.
Exactly. I would need the helmet with the 2 straws, I think, which I bought for my drummer and he still hasn't used. I'm very annoyed.
God, take that back.
I mean, rum on one side, Coke on the other. Duh.
Oh my God. I never even sorry, Ben.
We are here to talk about rugby, if that's all right with you. And by the way, it did remind me, like, I'm fascinated with the idea of nominative determinism. Your parents named you Rugby, and then here it is, a big part of your life. Are you amazed by that?
That they named me Rugby? Well, they did. I mean, the full name is Eleanor Rugby. I'm pulling that out. I'm pulling that out specifically because a friend of the Us, Squidge, has his own Discord server now, and I had recently told the story that my college roommates, also I'm sure definitely listening to my podcast these days, my college roommates used to call me Eleanor Rugby, and then 2 out of 4 of them started playing rugby. So
hey, who's
Eleanor
the Beatle
Rugby.
now?
So who's the Beatle now? Who's breaking up the band? Is it also me? We don't know.
Who's getting murdered outside of his
Also-
hotel? No.
Also, what I really like, and I just now put this all together, I really like that the Beatles also have a song that is just called Julia, but we went with Eleanor Rugby.
Oh yeah! Wow.
Yeah, fully forgot. Nailing it.
You're all over that Fab Four.
Oh, yeah. Four big
Well,
rugby fans, the boys from
Yes.
Liverpool.
Also, again, Ringo in particular.
Oh,
So there's a bit of an elephant in the room here. I actually found this remarkable shot of Ilona Maher grabbing this particular elephant by the scruff of the neck. How's that for research, my friend? Before,
fantastic. What is she doing with the elephant, I wonder?
well, I think we have to dig into it and find out. Before the Bristol Bears experiment began, you and I sat here and talked about how we thought it might go. It might not, but should not go. I screwed that up. It should go without saying that you and I both love Ilona Maher. On top of that, you love your Bristol Bears. One of the questions I posed back then, though, was could this move backfire for a team that made the finals last year? I think both of us felt the answer had to be, maybe. But now we've had several rounds to witness, and the question remains, looking back real quick, game one was a non-factor. I mean, that had nothing to do with her. When you come in with 5 minutes or whatever as a winger, I don't think she touched the ball. But then she had that great performance, the try of the week.
Absolutely.
So out there for almost the full 80. Kind of a mixed bag since then. Yesterday was nice. I have to ask, though, was adding Ilona Maher to the Bears a mistake? And I'm actually looking for two answers. Was it a mistake for the Bears, and was it a mistake for the PWR?
So, really great question and really great framing, because I think that those are two different answers. You're absolutely right. So my answer to that is it's hard to call it outright a mistake because so here's where I always have to caveat a few things before I say my whole explanation. Ilona Maher is a great sevens player. Absolutely. I have never said otherwise. What I have said is that doesn't necessarily translate to 15s always analogously immediately. I feel that in that, I've been correct. That said, there was a lot of discussion before, and then I say during. Unfortunately, her tenure has been quite short. It might end up really short. We're going to find out on Friday. But it's been a little bit short, and what she ended up playing in terms of position and in terms of her role in the Bears systems is not necessarily what some fans wanted to see. I'm doing air quotes. I think they really did want it, but perhaps they didn't necessarily know. There was a lot of clamoring about having her in the centers, which they did. And I would argue that of all of her outings, that was the least successful. That said, I think that the wing has been the right choice, and I have always maintained that. And I think in the Bears system specifically, that's where it's worked the best. And I say that because if you know the Bears system really well, that center pairing is, first of all, crucial. First of all, one of the best centers in the PWR happens to be one of the Bears captains. You're not going to bump her off unless she's injured. Amber Reed happened to be injured. And then it was really lucky that we had Ilona. So that's great. Amber was injured. Yeah, Rita was injured. Millie was injured shortly. Millie David on the wing was injured shortly. Renika Bonner is also now in the GB7 setup, so sometimes she's gone. All of that were great. All of that were great things, and it ended up being good that we had her because, again, she's a good rugby player. It's true that she is basically learning Elite 15s on the go. That said,
it is interesting because usually if you're talking about somebody going from the 7s to the 15s, your question marks are going to be around, you're going to think, well, that person's probably got speed and elusiveness, but do they have the power?
Yes.
Do they have the strength? Do they have the stamina?
Exactly.
And those are kind of her strong suits. You know what I mean? Like powering over people and then getting the little soft offload. She seems like a 15s player who went to 7s to me, but.
Right, and you could say it that way, except for that I've hesitated from making that kind of comparison before because I feel if you put the equation that way, it would actually make her look worse. Only because the strengths that she brings as a rugby player, and then we're translating them from 7s to 15s. Yes, it's true that she does come with a lot of. So, first, we're putting her in a context of sevens. In sevens, she is often the biggest person on the field, and she's often the strongest person on the field. She has said herself, and this is not an insult to her, in sevens, she's never the fastest person on the field. In 15s, she's definitely never the fastest person on the field. Not at PWR. She would absolutely be in many, many competitions. Let's say that. Sure. Again, to either casual viewers or to new viewers who are fans of hers who are now learning about.
I would say she has deceptive acceleration, though. Maybe she doesn't max out, but she gets there quick.
Absolutely. And so that is one of the things that is different between 7s and 15s when you're judging, for example, speed and acceleration.
That's a great point.
This is something else that she has said herself. A lot of the times when I am saying things that some people say make it sound like I'm being a hater, I am quoting her. So one of the things that she has said is that offloading is one of her weaknesses. Now that we've seen her in 15s, I agree. Her hands aren't her best quality. Her best qualities are in defense, and we did see that a bit. I would say in 15 so far, and this is because of the way the Bears used her, not necessarily what is and isn't strongest, but the way the Bears used her was for that crash through ball. She was on the outside. I don't think she ever played inside wing, but she was on the outside. It works really well. She's good at catching stragglers, which is what you want, and in that regard, I understand why you would say that she would be a center, but you need distribution, which if you are new to a system, you aren't going to get immediately. And you also, in general, if you're going to be what we in rugby call a playmaker, if you're going to be a playmaker, yet generally you need to have really intimate knowledge of the backline systems and the players around you. None of that is things that we're going to hold fault for to her, that she doesn't know them. It's absolutely true that she came in pretty recently. You can't know everything immediately. I will say, just because of, and this is also something she has spoken about, because of the nature of her being here, and this is where we're going to move into the question of good for Bears versus good for PWR, a lot of the value that she's bringing is her name more than the rugby, which is fine, especially because PWR itself and then women's rugby in the larger sense has been talking about we need to start making names, we need to start making personalities. That is all based off of her. That's true. When England started with the big Ellie Kildunn push, it was almost like laughably in direct response to Alona blowing up.
Yeah.
Totally. No, totally. And you can't blame them for doing it.
Yep. Yeah. And I love Ellie Kildunn. I was glad to see more of her.
Exactly. And in fact, one thing that I really appreciate and that I absolutely credit Alona for was they were asking, I think, Finn Russell. They're asking Finn Russell, hey, Alona, and then other people since, and I do want to give credit to Ellie Kildunn and Jess Breach. It would be awesome if they're both listening, but their podcast, Rugby Radio, has a lot of really good insights like this. But they went to Finn Russell, who is, for men, a character.
Yes.
But what they were talking to him about was, they don't got a lot of characters, do they? And he was like, yeah, it would be great. Well, I think of Finn Russell in that regard. And then the only other one I can think of is Antoine Dupont. And he went on GQ and I don't know what he was doing because I don't speak French, but he was with a bunch of kids dancing the other day.
Yeah. And he was surfing with the top 14 shield, I think.
Exactly. But those are sometimes the only kind of personality type things you can point to. Otherwise, you see men's sides often, and I'm seeing this more. God bless them, they're trying, but you see them kind of doing what you see the women's teams do all the time with funny interviews or the question of the day or making them play games. The men aren't comfortable with it yet, but remember,
I think they train it out of them.
I was
and
just
then
going to say,
ask them to bring it back, and it's it's too late.
So this is exactly what I was going to say. You're absolutely right. First of all, there is a whole thing that we could have a whole different episode about media training in general. But also remember, and this is something that I always try to impress whenever I have this kind of conversation, especially with people who predominantly watch men's, is the boys that you are seeing. There are of course exceptions. There are always exceptions, but on the whole, the men that you are seeing have been professional or near professional since they were like 17 or 18. You start falling into the professionalism fold when you're in our American equivalent of like late high school.
Yeah.
And if you think about yourself as a person, do you feel that your personality was like cemented and that you were at your best when you were 17 or 18? No. But instead, what they're getting at 17 or 18 is they started getting that media training that was just like, we all say the same thing every time. When they ask you about X, you say Y. When they ask you about this sort of problem that we're having with the team, you say this. And that's fine if you're like an HR company or like, I don't know, just like a parts manufacturer. Like, that's fine.
I saved a little segment for right at the end about full contact and how that has played out for this terrible series too. So
yes,
I think we're on the same page about that. Like,
we could definitely touch on that. But to answer the thing about PWR, for PWR, she has been great. Absolutely.
I mean, the price tag alone, right? Like the butts are in the seats. And
the butts are in the seats. The butts are in the seats. And you know, this is one of my takes where I am glad to take some heat. I realize that I am coming from a more pessimistic angle than a lot of people do. I don't foresee a huge change month over month or year over year, especially once she's gone, with that happening directly in response to her. However, getting more eyes at all, especially getting more eyes on the PWR, which is what we really wanted, because whether we like it or not, and we can talk about this another time, but there are very few other leagues that even compare. So at the moment, if you care a lot about women's rugby anywhere below the international level, you have to care about PWR because it's where people go.
And the numbers are so big. I was just kind of trying to think it out, and I'm like, if there's 1,000 more people in the stands, which I think might be a conservative number, like you're not going to get 1,000 people next year when she's not here. But are you going to get 100? Are 20 of them going to play? Are 10 of them going to be good? Or 5 of them going to be really good? Like these things are going to spread.
Exactly, and that is why I think that it is so good for PWR, because I feel that, you know, and again, I am a dedicated Bears fan. I was before. I will be after. It's great if it brings more Bears fans. It doesn't really. Let me say this, but the whole thing. It doesn't really matter to Bears because the Bears are very rich. They're one of the richest clubs in PWR. I only say that because, you know, grudgingly, and this is a really like nitpicky rugby type thing, but if I could have any dream that I wanted, she would have gone and played for Sail Sharks. That would have been a watershed. But that said, she was chasing
the implication being Sail is an underfunded team.
Sail is deeply underfunded. They're also constantly overlooked for all sorts of things. I mean, they put out great social media. They put out great social media. Sail also has like 4 or 5 other Eagles. I mean, now she's not. She's leaving now. But Rachel Taylor, former Welsh international, was the head coach. Katie Daly McLean is also one of the coaches. There's a lot of good, but as with every sport, this isn't just unique to rugby. But everybody forgets that somebody has to be the bottom of the table. Yeah, there can't always be only first, second, and third place teams, even if they're great. You know, we look at Loughborough now. How great is the growth there? How great is the growth at Loughborough? You and I will have to talk off the air about Charlie Beckett. I have tinfoil theories. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for him as well.
That's actually a great idea. We should have the tinfoil segment. We should have
yes, absolutely, where we make shit up, but we really think it's true. But to wrap it all up, the attention is great. The attendance growth is great, even if it's temporary. Because what it's saying to advertisers is that if we were able to build more of Alona types, we could keep doing this. It's the potential. So great. For PWR, excellent. I would be remiss if I didn't say one thing that I feel truly in my heart, and this is the thing that gets me the most heat. I've been getting people yelling at me on Instagram for mentioning it, even casually. I do wish that she had gone to Gloucester Hartpury. I think I do feel that the media attention was a bit of a distraction. I predicted that.
You mean Gloucester's more sort of built to handle that kind of extra spotlight?
I would like our main enemy weekend. I don't. Yes,
It's funny
honestly.
because my first thought was, oh, that's like Jordy Barrett going to Leinster, but like you're saying it's the opposite almost. It's like
Um,
Kevin
I,
Barrett.
I, I say Gloucester specifically because I don't think anything could slow them down otherwise. So if
Yeah.
this were to happen, I think it wouldn't even really impact them.
Yeah.
But Bears,
Huh.
when she came in, it happened to be in a time that we were missing our talismanic captain. We were missing a few other superstars, and more importantly, there had been a spate of, we'll charitably call them questionable performances. So let me also say that I don't think that Bears being where they are now is because of Alona. Absolutely not.
Okay.
However, I do have more than a few sources inside the team, whether they be players or players' parents or just people who work within the club, who expressed a bit of annoyance. There were a lot of camera crews a lot of the time. And sometimes people who didn't necessarily want to be involved with that were brought in because
Yeah.
of other things about them.
That first game when they kept shoving cameras over on the bench and she's
she
just sitting
hated
there
it.
and she eventually was like, would you get the hell out of my face? I'm
Right,
not playing right now.
And what really got me about that moment was that you could see on her face that she was like, this isn't appropriate. But everybody was like, let's make that funny. And she was like, it's not funny, just go away. And this is why it rankles me when people think that I'm an Alona hater. I'm not. It's just that I feel like sometimes I'm the only one who listens to her.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
It can't always
we hate
be
Alona exactly as much as she does, which is almost none, but
which is
like,
none.
but is very careful.
but also she is a person, and this is something that just happens with somebody with anybody in any sport who rockets to stardom, is that the parasociality, we see it all. Like, people impress their wants and needs and desires upon Taylor Swift or Beyonce. They think they know them. They think they know everything about them. People come out and say Taylor Swift couldn't possibly have bad politics. She's like, whatever. All of these sorts of things where it's like, this girl didn't say a goddamn thing. And when Alona does talk about it, I think people get tripped up because she is somebody who is self-confident, which is awesome, and we want girls to see.
Exactly.
But just like everything else in the world, self-confidence is not black and white. It's not either you have all of it or you have none. It's that she has a good amount. It's a healthy amount that is put out into the world. But who knows what it's like in private? Who knows how it feels to the people around her?
Well, one of her favorite things, I don't know how recent it was, but they asked her about imposter syndrome, and she was kind of like, what is that? And they explained it to her, and she was like, I don't think I have that.
Well, and actually that interview was exactly what I was referencing when I was saying what I just said. I really liked that interview, but I have something interesting there. I really liked that interview. It was on British media. It was by a British interviewer, and it was not received well. Really. Now, I was talking with friend of the pod, Hugh and Harley, among other people, my friend Sean, Hattie, Leslie, what up, pals? We were all talking about it, and I referenced that interview, and I was like, I'm really glad she said that, because I fucking hate that they keep asking women rugby players about that. Because it's an embarrassing question to ask. Not to answer. It's an embarrassing question to ask.
It's embarrassing if they don't ask it to everybody as well.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, exactly. And that's implied because we know that they don't. Like, they're not going to ask Roger Federer if he has imposter syndrome.
Right. Exactly.
Right. But so in one breath, you are saying this is Alona the GOAT, which I also don't agree with. I think she's a great rugby player. I think there are very few GOATs in general. But in one breath, you're saying that. And then in the next, you're like, but. So what's interesting is my UK friends said overwhelmingly that didn't land, and it was not received well, because you're always supposed to be a little bit humble. And I took umbrage at that as an American, because I don't feel that there's any lack of humility there.
Exactly. I feel like she was perfectly humble the way she said it. She was like, I'm because there was like a gratefulness implied, like, oh wow, that sounds like that would be tough, and I'm kind of glad I don't have to struggle with that among the other things I do struggle with.
Exactly. And I think the way that she said it was calculated, with no connotation to that. Just, it was calculated, because there are ways that you can say that do make you sound like an asshole. I don't think that's the way she said it. I think the way she said it was a way that was supposed to make the interviewer feel kind of like, oh, because you should, when you ask somebody that, you should feel embarrassed, to me. But apparently that is something that you are very easily supposed to go like, oh, yeah, it's really hard. Sometimes I look around and I wonder how I got here. That's just not something she's going to say.
Yeah.
And on top of that, that's why you love her. You can't have it both ways. But
it's all tied up in the metric conversion and the voltage thing, like that adapter you need.
No,
like you
it
need
really
that with interviews too. You need that extra thing to plug in.
But yes, actually, yes.
That's the stupidest yet most apt analogy I've ever made.
Exactly. I was going to say it's one that just really feels kind of analogous, like one-to-one analogous of I don't know. And I've been thinking a lot about this after this conversation with my friends, and also after the interview got around a little bit, because I would understand it if, again, casual viewers or people who came over to rugby because they liked her on Dancing with the Stars were saying this, but I'm getting this from people who know and love rugby and ostensibly know and love American. And by the way, I believe if they asked Sophie Goody that question, she'd say the same thing. Americans and Canadians, this is surprising to me considering how many British people you and I talk to all the time, but I was really surprised that people love it as much as I did. I thought it was a perfect answer.
Yeah.
That's how I would answer it if somebody asked me, because in America, and especially what people really love about her and what young women love about her is that she has said, like, I belong here at the top because I worked for it. Yes, 100%. I completely agree. If somebody were to ask me in my field of work outside of rugby if I feel like I deserve where I've gotten, yes, I worked my ass off. Yep.
Yeah.
And if you asked a man that, I feel like there would be an even shorter amount of wait time before they were like, what do you mean? No. What you want her to come say like, oh, I have no idea how I won that Olympic bronze medal. She has no idea. What do you mean? You spent all of these months extolling how she got there,
and she stuck to it, and it worked. Yeah,
right. You're asking somebody not to celebrate their wins, and I understand maybe that's just a cross-cultural thing that doesn't translate. But when you ask an American athlete, like, do you feel you worked for this? The answer is yes.
Well, we're talking about the Bears. We've already mentioned Hugh and Harley. And on the pod that you guys share, you recently talked about this as well. And it's funny because Hugh and I were sort of texting back and forth at one point, and we were talking about the Bears attack, which is the next thing I want to talk about.
Oh, good. Good. Notorious lover of the Bears attack, Hugh.
I almost sent you a screenshot of the two texts in a row because he said, it's stupid and it's wrong and I hate it. And I answered, it's stupid and it's wrong and I love it. And I felt like that was the microcosm of what they do. Like I watch Super Rugby and I've never seen a team more willing to play from anywhere than the Bristol Bears do. And Super Rugby, they love going through the phases. Does their style make you love them even more as somebody who's already a fan, or are you always sitting on the edge of your couch like pulling your hair out going, why? What are you doing? Kick it.
So interesting you asked that, because just a few minutes before I jumped on here with you, in fact, you and I were texting and I was scrolling and watching this. Bears posted like an hour or two before you and I jumped on an interview with Sarah Byrne, who was player of the match yesterday. Another interview that we hadn't seen. But she was asked something about this, but it ended up with her talking about exactly
By the
this.
way, my son was watching that game with me, and at one point she just trucked somebody, and he went, ooh, and they got a shot of her back with the burn, and I said, feel the burn. And he's been laughing about it ever since.
Yeah, the Burninator. Absolutely, and that had to have been the line break where she fed it off to Kira for the first try. Oh, yeah, absolutely, and that's a burner special. But what Sarah was saying was that they have heard our pleas. And they said no. And she said she was talking about the Bears in general, understand the frustration and they understand the viewers not understanding the Bears vision. Okay. And that kind of took me back, and I was like, I felt like I understood. I watch you guys a lot. I felt like I understood. But they feel that it is something that is, I think in the beginning it was something that's not expected. Now it is something that but it is something that is still hard to attack or defend against, because it's not what you're expecting, because what you're expecting is kicking.
Did she say anything about, like, what did she say? Is it about exhausting the defense as well? Because I've kind of thought of that, like they're not expecting it, and they feel like we shouldn't be playing defense and trying to get turnovers here in this part of the game. Like,
well, she didn't.
I'm
she
trying
didn't
to
say
come up with reasons.
Right. So she didn't talk about that, and I don't think anybody ever would, because that's very much part of the secret sauce. But if you're on the outside, either as a casual fan or a super fan looking in, my interpretation of it is that it is a bit of a kind of like big chested challenge of just like, you're gonna have to run at us. You're just gonna have to. We're not gonna give you any chance to take even a minute to like recollect and let your fly half deal, or let your fullback deal with it. We're just going to keep coming. And I say that because it's definitely, you can see, first of all, they're coached by Dave Ward, so you're kind of going to be able to tell. But they are a very forwards focused team. They revel very much in most of their defending prowess being in their big strong girls, who can hit over and over and over, and the bet that they will have more strength and more endurance than the opponents. When that goes wrong, it just so happens to often be the time that you're going, kick it. And so, maybe they're onto something. I am unfortunately apparently not enlightened enough. I am still a person who yells kick it a lot. But apparently they have heard it, they have considered it, and they're saying no this time. I'm still not 100% sold, only because look where we are. As we were talking about our friend Hugh, as Hugh is the one who actually said to me when he was also ripping his hair out, was the worst part is that when it works really well.
Yeah.
And you can't. When you're right, you're right.
It makes me think of the
when
NBA
you're right,
when it's like, that's a terrible shot, and then it goes in, and you're like, great shot.
Damn. Great shot. No, that's exactly it, though. No, that is such a really, especially because I've been watching so much Unrivaled. That's absolutely it, is where it's just like, there's no way that, it's suspicious.
Don't. Oh, good shot.
Oh, yeah. No, I was there with you the whole time, for sure. You should have done that, for sure. No, I mean, you and anybody else would argue, for example, if you weren't a big PWR watcher, or if you weren't a big Bears watcher, you would look at something like the attack play of give it to Burn, and you'd be like, you sure? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure. And,
by the way,
part of that may be my Wales brainworms, which we can talk about.
I don't mean to keep bringing up my son, but like it's funny because when I watch Burn, I'm thinking, ooh, this is somebody who's going to really hammer you. She's going to shove you out of the way. Her little, fends are always vicious.
She comes from the back row.
But my son's first impression was, whoa, she's fast. And I was like,
which is insane.
Yeah.
Which is a very women's rugbyism at this time. But you think about Burn, you think about Cecilia Tuipulotu, which, oh my God, yes. I cannot believe we're going to be missing her for Six Nations. I mean, there's still a chance she'll be back for the World Cup. We're not talking about that right now, but you think about that. I mean, I guess Mae Campbell is also a back row, but she's played in the front row. She's also one of the top try scorers. The top try scorer for Bears right now is Millie David, only because she's a fucking freak. The next one is Lark Akin-Davis, who is a hooker.
And who I foolishly said I had never heard of last time we talked.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, I can't tell if you're being serious right now.
I didn't know, only because she's won a World Cup. But that is another one. But no, we think about like Maud Muir is another one where you're just like, oh yeah, you can rely on to score. I think that really may end up, when we look at it a year or two down the line, I think that may end up just a difference between men and women in terms of rugby, is that and I've been watching, actually, we were talking about this too. I've been more than ever watching men's rugby. The group chat has finally convinced me. I'm watching all of the men's Six Nations. I'm also watching a little bit of the Rugby Europe Championship, only because, I have some Romanian. Yeah, I have some Romanian friends. Romanian rugby is on a huge resurgence right now that has been down for like since the 90s.
Yeah.
And I am seeing this, and I will admit that it is probably also that I am a queer woman who doesn't hang out with a lot of men's bodies. But those boys are big, but they cannot run. Their props are
Yes.
their props are huge, and they are fantastic athletes, but like they can't truck it.
Yeah.
They can't.
Nope.
And I like I think of Byrne, for example. She is extremely strong for both her size and her speed. But like she's got wheels. And
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody completely analogous
That's
with.
my favorite thing when you have, men or women, when you have a player who's huge, but one of their key things is like footwork or
Mhm.
like the soft
Yes.
hands. Like, oh, that
Yes.
combination is like, you're not supposed to have both those things.
Exactly. And then when you think about it further, when you dig in a little bit and you think about it and you think about what their coaches who have gotten to this level are thinking about mentally, and you see their gameplay kind of forming in your own head where you're like, oh, I see your plan. I see your plan. And then you watch it, and you will often find that what you predicted is exactly what happens. All it
Yeah.
is just using a type of tool that you didn't know existed.
Well, I wanted to also to give a quick shout out to Holly Aitchison, who's become one of my
Oh my
favorite
goodness.
players.
Oh
I
my
was
goodness.
hoping I was hoping you could just kind of talk about her a little bit, just to make me feel happy,
Absolutely.
because I don't have
Absolutely.
anyone around who can tell me why I love her so much, and I feel like you can.
She's so I and the first thing that I will say, and definitely of all the types of players who may secretly listen to stuff that I make, England players is definitely really low down. But I will say this now. I've never said to the contrary, but people who know me closely know that I was like really on the fence about getting Hannah Botterman and Holly Aitchison to Bears.
Mm.
Just because until then I had only been, first of all, very anti-series, and second of all very anti-England. So I was hesitant. But
Very
first of
reasonable
all,
things to be.
I know. First of all, I absolutely love both of them. Personality wise, they're both fantastic. I have really enjoyed both of them. Love being on socials. They're very funny. They're also a really cute couple. All of that. Holly, though, Holly is a fantastic 10. I'm still kind of figuring out what it is that I love most about her. First of all, her kicking vision, and again, this will sound contrary to everything I've been saying about the Bears. Her kicking vision is fantastic, and I say that even based on when it is kicks for touch, when it is a penalty. She's not necessarily the first go-to place kicker, but she
Mm.
can. She's really versatile. My favorite thing about her, though, is her field vision, is her game management. I think that she makes a really great partner with Kira Bevan, who is already really fun to watch play if you enjoy rugby. Also, I'm completely partial, not impartial. I'm very partial. KB is one of my favorite players on the planet.
Yes.
I think that Holly plays really well with her. I think that Holly is a very patient 10, which is not always the case.
And the
Um,
thing, the word I came up with when I was trying was toughness too. But
yeah,
she doesn't have aggressive toughness. She's not grabbing by the scruff of the neck.
no,
She
it's
has
very
the. It
hard to
doesn't matter
shake.
how hard you hit
It's
me.
very hard to shake her.
Nothing shakes her ever.
Exactly. That yeah, and that's where I was going with that actually, is that with great game vision and with a really solid and unshakable head, you can just wait out a lot of things. And I think that even also might be a frustration with some Bears watchers. I don't
Yeah.
mind that. I really like when she frustrates people with just moving at her own
Yeah.
pace.
Yeah.
I think even in some cases, I think Kira has learned from that. I'm really interested to see how it translates for Wales now, especially now that Wales is going to have a competent coach. Um, but
Imagine.
we could talk all about that. That's also all in my tinfoil hat stuff. Um, yeah, no, I'm super stoked. I think Holly, and I think that now I am seeing why she is so instrumental to the Red Roses as she is.
Mm.
I will admit when she first came over and when I had only seen her playing with Series, who play a very different style than the Bears, I didn't exactly get it. I was more excited about Bots, who ended up also being a fantastic acquisition.
Yeah.
But I've been consistently, and this is probably also colored by my being a Wales fan. Wales has always had a dearth at 10 since Eleanor Snowsell retired. um I really like her rugby brain. I think that plays a lot of it. And when she's spoken off the pitch and about herself and her life, she's spoken about having anxiety, which is awesome. She also talks about social stuff. But I think it gave an insight into how I think she ended up the kind of player that she is. And
Yeah.
through that, it means that she's going to have unending patience, and it frustrates the right people. I think toughness.
There's because I'm someone who is, I mean, I know the phrase unflappable. Is flappable a phrase? Because I am flappable.
You and I are both very
flappable.
absolutely, and that's absolutely how I viewed myself when I was a player. My strengths were other things, but I am not the least shakeable person. I'm pretty shakeable.
I'm gonna get worked up.
I'm shakeable.
So
right.
I feel like her unflappableness
Yes, her unflappability
is like a separate skill. Like
it
is. There's people who know things, but they can't necessarily teach other people those things because teaching is a separate skill.
Yes.
And I feel like being unflappable is a whole separate skill on top of all the rugby stuff.
Absolutely. And I actually had this kind of conversation with some other friends who are also rugby faithful. I am of the school of belief that not every player who is great has to have a certain set of qualities. I think that it has to be all their qualities together in the way that they perform. But one that everybody seems to always attribute to a truly great player is that they also have to be a leader. They have to be the captain, or they have to be some kind of leadership. But
I don't know about that.
Right. And I take umbrage with that because I feel like, first of all, leadership can be a bunch of different things. Second of all, even without it, I don't agree that, first of all, you can't have 7 captains. What if you have 7 great people on your team?
And for me, seeing somebody being unflappable, that's enough. They don't have to tell me, hey,
exactly.
be less flappable.
Well, and also,
they just have to show me that, and I can go, oh, geez,
exactly.
I need to be doing that right now.
And also, isn't there something to be said for just demonstrating?
Right.
I don't understand why it always has to be that you have to be able to impart and give that skill to somebody to have been truly great. I see Holly Aitchison as somebody who I feel like has collected a lot of skills. I think that she's a very cerebral player, and because of that, she has collected certain skills that she knows she can capitalize upon. I think she's studious. And I think that her strength lies in somebody might call it overthinking. I don't. I think her strength lies in thinking quickly.
Yeah. Decision
and you can't teach that anyway.
Exactly. And also, one of the things I love about the PWR, I get to see players who play for the Red Roses and actually root for them and enjoy them, which I cannot do when they're playing.
I love it. I mean, especially considering that Amber Reed is absolutely one of my favorite players, but good God, is she a Red Rose?
Well,
what can you do?
Give us, we already touched on Holly, give us 3 more Bears players who may have been a bit overlooked ever since the arrival of the world's greatest rugby sensation.
Evie Gallagher is one that I always do, especially now that she was, in fairness, she was injured for some of the overlap with Alona's arrival. But I will always if anybody ever gives me opportunity, I will always say, don't forget her. It's very easy in general to forget 8s. I've been thinking a lot. I don't know why. I've been thinking a lot about that lately. I don't know why, but I think about other extraordinary 8s, and I think of like Kate Zachary. I think of Jade Conkle, and you think of those people independently as like really great players or whatever. But when you're thinking of their greatness or whatever, you're thinking of like when Kate plays 13 or when Jade has been a flanker. Okay, so Evie is one. Another great one. Oh, Simi Pam, obviously. I feel that she has no longer been overlooked necessarily, because I will say this for the new Alona fans. Some of them, whatever, they're not listening to this. Some of them are super annoying. Some of them are only here for her. They don't care about the team. All they do on every post, even if it's not a post about her, is like, where's Alona? When will Alona play? That's not a lot of them. And some of them, I have met a small handful, but a devoted small handful that were really like, I really liked her on Dancing with the Stars, or I really liked her at the Olympics. I didn't know anything about 15s. I didn't know anything about rugby. I followed her over to the Bears. When I could watch, I started like really liking the people she was playing with. I started really liking watching the sport. And of those people, overwhelmingly, so many of them, and I'm seeing people that, because I'm a Bears faithful, I've always been in all the social media posts, all the comments and everything. And I've started seeing the same people over time being like, fucking big Simi run. I'm like, yeah, right? Right? Isn't it dope?
Nice.
But it is, and that is why I am so hesitant to blame anything on the arrival or the media stuff or whatever. It's fair to have concerns, but I do think overall, and again, like we were saying way earlier, even if it only ends up bringing 20, 30, 50 actual like stays with the Bears forever fans,
right.
okay, you usually don't get that many at once. So cool.
Exactly. Yep.
And if they are looking at, and you know, obviously this isn't the point of rugby. It's not why people come to us to ask about rugby, but to me it is important. A lot of younger girls are looking at somebody like Simi, and what they think is really cool is that she's a doctor.
Yes.
For us, that's loaded because we know that there is a downside to that. It sucks that anybody has to have a full-time job and be a pro rugby player at all. But if you're a 9-year-old, you don't have to worry about what I worry about. It's really cool that you think that it's cool that she busts ass and she's a doctor. Awesome.
Yep.
That's what we want to see. And you know, what else can you say? That's exactly what you want.
That becomes somebody that you look up to as having a cape and like can walk
Exactly.
into the phone booth and be too
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she absolutely is. And what I have appreciated that I think Bears, you know, they picked it up a little bit late, but Bears picked up pretty quickly that people were coming for Alona, and that's awesome. But right now the iron is very hot for you to drop more of the Bears, and I think they did. I think they did a really good job with spotlighting some other ones. They did a really great piece on Jenny Herring that completely surprised a lot of people. Jenny Herring is also a full-time physics teacher biology. Sorry, Jenny, biology teacher. And they did a day in the life with her, and I think that was one of their most popular posts of the whole season. It got hundreds of thousands of views, and so many people. I saw many conversations I wasn't a part of, but that I was watching happen. Where there were like 60 and 70-year-old women who were like, I found Alona through Dancing with the Stars. I came over to the Bears. I'm a retired teacher. What you're doing is amazing. I had no idea that you had to do this. And even if that doesn't mean that they are now diehard rugby fans, which is not always the goal anyway, what we did was we got somebody who might then talk to one of their grandkids and be like, you know, I saw this women's rugby player. It's pretty cool. You can do both. Like, you can still be an astronaut and you can go play rugby, and maybe their kid will go play rugby. That's still something. And I
Rachel
think
Law, who I've had on the show many times, especially before the last Women's World Cup, like she's so great.
Oh, fantastic get.
And one time when I was in touch with her, we were setting up a time, and she was like, "Okay, I'm good for this time, except it's foaling season, so I might get called away at any moment." And I was like,
"Oh my
wow,
God.
Never have I had somebody say I might be unavailable because of foaling season."
I have heard, and this was probably before your rugby fandom time, and for me it was when I was playing, not when I was now just talking about it. But I heard that happened a lot with Nigel Owens. Back in the day.
I believe it. Yeah.
Like, that he was just like, they are currently giving birth.
By name.
Yeah, they are currently giving birth.
Well. Yeah.
They are currently giving birth. I have to go. I have my hand halfway up a cow. Yeah. But you know, we joke or whatever, and it is important to point out, especially to men who only watch men's and are coming over to women's, or who just happen to be listening to this episode and don't usually listen to women's. Wow, that's fun and it's a cool story. You don't hear it a lot from the men's rugby players,
right.
But most women have it at this point.
Yeah.
Still have. And I like that Bears were like, you know what? If there's any time to tell those stories, it's now.
Well, just this weekend, in fact, yesterday, we had a couple of makeup fixtures in the PWR, including, of course, the game of the week.
Oh, yes.
Bristol hosting Exeter.
West Country Crunch.
A playoff place. Yeah, they kept saying that, of course, as somebody who's hasn't really been to England. It's so funny the way in England they're always like, oh, this is super far away, and oh, these are our neighbors, and it's like you're all the neighbor, you're all each other's neighbors.
So you're right.
You're all 20 feet away.
And there have been like several just outside of rugby, just like on Twitter, Blue Sky, and everything. Just in general, the UK is always surprised, and I have found this out actually through our mutual friends. But it is insane to them, not to us, but it is insane of like driving 7 hours.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay. For like several of my relationships, I have driven 7 hours. That's
exactly.
That's not okay. Every time I've never flown to Boston. I've only driven, and I've been to Boston dozens of times. Like this is crazy to me. I'm like, 8 hours is just to Boston. That's fine.
Last time I went to DC, it was in my car. That's what you do.
It's fine. And also it's a really pretty drive for that one. But But yeah.
So in this match they were like, oh, this is a fierce, neighborly rivalry or
West
like a
Country
derby. And I was like, oh, is it? Where are they?
Well, what I really love is that, and I've gotten to know all this, especially also being a Wales fan. But the thing that connects the West Country is the M5. It's their big highway. But so, okay, we totally understand that. We're Americans. And you and I are on the East Coast. We absolutely understand. But what I really love is that I would love it if we had like a 95 derby, but it was like every city.
Yeah, exactly. But the Boston versus Miami.
I was just going to say the 95 rivalry is Boston versus Atlanta. And they're like, what do you, because on the map it doesn't look so close. I'm like, yeah, but it's on 95.
It's on the same road. Yep.
It's on Route 1, baby. You can go all the way down to Key West.
Well, my best friend in the world, Amy, she's coming over for the Super Bowl tonight. She literally started watching rugby because she knew how much it meant to me, and is now like, I get texts from her saying I'm catching up on the Six Nations, I'm catching up on the Sevens and stuff. She's the best. And somebody she was involved with lived in Miami, and every single year she would drive by herself from outside Boston to Miami and back, and it was a big deal, but it wasn't that big a deal, and became a thing. And like,
it's too hard.
But it's also funny where the biggest thing she noticed was like, if you're making that drive, you get to the border of Florida and you're like, yes, I made it. And then you're like, oh, wait,
wrong.
I'm 5 hours away.
Yep. Oh my God. Yeah. And I did long ago date somebody in southern Florida, and I only ever once drove down to South Florida once. And I had that mistake, especially like once I got past Atlanta, I was like, past Atlanta, baby,
yeah,
we're
like,
almost
hey!
there. Wrong. Past Atlanta, I have another half of the drive. Folks, I need you to look at a map of America.
So Bristol Exeter, I was unsurprised to see Kira Bevan getting the first try of the day, and then I was quietly excited to see Hope Rogers getting the answering score. How proud are you to see the effectiveness and the success of our multiple Eagles in the PWR? Like, as a group, they've made such a difference this year. Every week, like the try scorer of the week, the player of the week, in the team of the week, 5 of them are Americans.
Okay, so I'm so glad you brought that up. I've been really over the moon. I wish I'll admit, like, I haven't really found a good format or way to like really extol the virtue of, but truly this year is the best year in memory for me for American women's rugby.
Yeah.
The performances and you know what? It's one of many things to highlight, but it is something that is near to my heart. But a 2-year-old team, the Ealing Trailfinders women, within a few weeks of getting Kate Zachary, was like, oh shit, that's a captain. There are not a lot of American captains on any teams anywhere.
True.
But people see Kate Zachary and they see a leader, and that means a lot to me. Elsewhere, though, you're absolutely right. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because there's a lot to celebrate and a lot to point out that Eagles have been doing really well in the rugby. Also, overwhelmingly, so many of them have integrated because, and I do give American rugby this credit. I do think that they went over with what we were all kind of imbued with when we played rugby here in America, with the innate knowledge that it's not going to come from nowhere. You have to grow it yourself. And in England, compared to here, it feels like it's just budding asexually. It's just happening. Like rugby teams just get born there. It doesn't seem like it's that hard.
Like you are probably within shouting distance of a rugby club if you live in England. And
exactly.
I have literally never seen one.
But women my age, well, so I am older than all of those Eagles right now. But I say that because even those Eagles have still, when they were younger, most of those Eagles, unless their parents were also players or coaches, most of them also started in high school or college. We still don't have the adults that had it at youth. Now we do. In America, we do now absolutely have youth clubs. The girls that are coming up right now, the girls who are on our U18 and U20, a lot of those have started earlier. But not even the Eagles who are there now, and because of that, and in fairness, also because of visa rules, you do have to be working while you're over there to be on a visa, unless you're Alona Mar, apparently. Everybody else has to.
She just needs a reservation at a restaurant.
Apparently. But I think so. So I was trying to take this tally. Kate Zachary also is the head coach at the Ealing Academy. So there's that. When Kate Zach was at Exeter, she was, oh God, and I know I'm going to get it wrong, and I feel really bad because Gabby Cantorna still coaches there. Two of the Eagles are head coaches at one of the two academy feeders for Exeter. Several of the girls at Sale teach at the Sale FC, either like foundational team or 1871 or whatever it's called. Everywhere the Eagles girls go, I feel like they are committed to growing the game, and I think that that's a really good testament to our what we bring to the international stage. I know, and fairly, I'm not blaming them for this, but I do know that there's trepidation with bringing us over. The same as there would be with any group. God, for the longest time, RFU was resistant to having Welsh and Scottish in the league, but they were. And I say this because there is also a background conversation right now with the advent and mixed success of the Celtic Challenge. There's again the discussion of why don't we have an Anglo-Welsh league, and that'll never happen. And the reason that I bring all of this up, well, it'll never happen because of many things about the RFU, and the main one being that they say it nicer than this. I'm just putting it succinctly, is that they said it's not our job to develop your players. And okay, you're right. So interestingly, instead, the Celtic nations have looked elsewhere. First, they're playing together. That's awesome. But they've started having the transatlantic competitions during the summer, and including us and Canada. That's been a big thing. We already know that other people are looking at us because we have the Pacific Four, which I think it's only a matter of time before it becomes the Pacific Six.
I love that.
Well, yeah, I mean, Japan
especially
is developing.
Because of
Japan
the
and China
thread connecting them in the first place, as you and I have talked about. Like
true. It is.
We're technically on the same ocean, kind of.
Well, but now more than ever, and this is a thread that I'm using to connect those, is that now more than ever we are getting a very solid answer from England and what we would consider the home nations (parentheses expanded) of saying like thanks, but no. Spain and Portugal and Italy are working together now. I think a lot of regions of play are deciding to rely on.
We should be looking at Brazil.
So yes, the problem, I agree, but the problem there is the difference between RAN Rugby Americas North and Sud-America Rugby. Sud-America Rugby also very much wants to develop their own. Colombia was recently at the last, Colombia made WXV, for the first time.
Right.
There's a lot of development. Brazil is developing their 15s very much. Argentina is, of course. Uruguay is, of course. They're going to want to do it insularly. We, on the other hand, I feel are starting to take Rugby Americas North more seriously. We're expanding in the Caribbean. Mexico has started regularly putting up a 15s team that at least plays USA Falcons, which is kind of like our A. Yeah, it's kind of like USA A. And then Canada, of course. I wish Canada was more communicative. I wish I knew more about what they were doing. What I'm really curious about is how many Canadians come to play in WER, but I know as much as anybody else there. But that said, we're going to start relying on ourselves and our own regions. And unfortunately, when you look at where America is on the globe, we have to either look east or west. North and south we already play with. They want to come with us. Awesome.
Right.
Mexico isn't ready. Canada already is with us all the time. And fine. If we can't go east, we'll go west, and we did. I'm actually fine with Pacific Four. I know that's kind of a dicey.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
I'm sure. I feel like the players find it weirder, but I'm just watching, so it's fine.
Yeah, they do find it weirder. I think probably part of it is also our not being on the Eagles team, that we find it weirder. But when you think about
not yet.
Well, not yet. Most of those girls are often going to Australia and New Zealand multiple times for other things.
If you play rugby in the United States, you're at a high level. Right. You're used to massive travel.
Exactly. Well, you're used to massive travel, but specifically to these places, and you want to be going places where it's easy for your logistics teams to work.
Yeah.
with unions who want to work with you. Well, I say that because the natural expansion would be adding Fiji and Japan. The
Yeah.
problem is Fiji cannot sustain that travel for their own team. Additionally, they don't know how easily they could host, for example, 4 or 5 other teams
Yeah.
on land. And you don't want to rely on your nearest, especially if we also added Japan, you don't want to rely on your nearest neighbors. It's Japan.
Yeah.
They can't. But that said, I don't know. I don't actually know where I'm going with that, except for please consider it World Rugby.
Dragging us back to this weekend, the driving maul proved a real weapon for the Bears this weekend. I hadn't noticed, but I guess I'm maybe an inexperienced viewer. I hadn't realized what a powerful weapon it was for them.
Oh.
And the Chiefs started to look completely overmatched by halftime. As it turned into a bit of a blowout, there was some serious chippiness out there. I loved what I saw from Bristol, kind of shoving Exeter around a bit. I was reminded I was very lucky to get Philippa Tuttiett on the show, and I asked her about those little skirmishes that come out, and she said, "Oh well, I always thought it was my job to not get involved because they need to ask somebody later what happened, and somebody needs to be able to report what happened. So I thought it was important for me to be a witness."
It's so cool. Okay, so I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, not really, because this doesn't have anything to do with women's rugby, but I'm really glad that you brought it up because I truly just had a conversation. I've mentioned on and off various places that I've spoken that I'm introducing this group that I met by our mutual liking women's basketball and women's soccer. And I've gotten them all into rugby. And one of the things that I've gotten them into is the teams in their own wherever they're from. Obviously a lot are from the UK, but some are from continental Europe, and some are Romanian. So I was watching the Romania Belgium men's game for Rugby Europe Championship. And Romania as the team, just like as a people, they're very strong, very proud. They get a little chippy. And at one point, I was watching live via Discord with my Romanian friends, and of course what I call and what a men's tussle, which is when they all start grabbing each other's shirts and just saying mean things.
This is your jersey. No, this is your jersey.
Your jersey. Oh my God, that is such a good description, Phil. You've got to patent that. You're absolutely right. That's exactly it. It's exactly that. So, at one point in one of their grabby tussles, as you and I both know, in the span of those tussles, there's always at least one player who's breaking everything up and like saying, calm down, calm down, calm down. Yeah, exactly. Well, but the thing is, and just like Philippa said, like it always ends up kind of like being your job, if that's your job on the pitch. You can't be one of the fighters. You're one of the guys who breaks it up. And the Romania's guy, which is it's remarkable. It always ends up being that the scrum half is the initiator or the guy who breaks it up. One of the two, but it was the scrum half who was breaking it up in this case, and he just kept yelling something in Romanian to all the other players because sometimes it's funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's shut the fuck up.
That photo of Faf de Klerk being almost lifted off his little
I was just gonna say
by the
like
big
a
giant
ragdoll.
Welshman, and he's just smiling away.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're not gonna punch me.
You're not gonna.
The guy's like, I know I'm not gonna punch you, but I really want to.
Honestly, interesting that you brought up. Actually, you know what? Not that I don't know if any of the newer fans are going to be listening to this, but a comment that I saw a lot. You were mentioning one of the two Alona tries for the Bears. The one where Sab Poulin unfortunately goes over her head. We both know that this just happens in rugby all the time.
Yeah.
It was just that she was already running. She didn't mean to, but Alona mean mugged her a little. Also happens in rugby all the time. None of us second guessed this, but what I ended up seeing in the Instagram comments was a ton of people being like, "Ooh, she wanted to kill that girl," and I was like, "No, she forgot about it 3 seconds after. No, if she wanted to kill her, she would have gone after it."
Yeah.
But we know that like that, you have to have levels, or you're just going to be in 100 fights the whole time.
Exactly.
And
well,
now we know.
By the way, Abby Ward, she got the turnover that slammed the door on the visitors. It was a massive 45-17 win for your Bears at full time. Anything else stand out for you in this result? Like it was needed based on what we're just about to talk about the table, but like it needed to be a win and it needed to be big.
It needed to be a win and it needed to be big. I caution especially new viewers, I am obviously, like all Bears fans, I am more optimistic now than I was before the win. I caution Bears fans that the Harlequins have been no joke this season.
And it's a little out of their hands because they've only got the one game left, and Exeter.
That's exactly where I was going. So the big question that folks have been asking me, I've been asking the Bears socials, that we can clip up and just make an easy answer, is the big problem now is going to be math. Yep. Exeter has one more game, and it will be Friday.
In the NFL, they always say that their fate is in their hands, and in this case, fate is not in Bristol's hands.
It's not. They
have one job left, and then they have to watch.
Frustratingly, there are two things, and only one of them they can control at all. What they can control is the game against Quins. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. We haven't beaten the Quins this year. The Quins have also lost twice in 11 matches.
Yep.
We're also going to be at Twickenham.
Yep.
Newer fans.
I'm sorry, Allianz North. I think you mean.
Oh, sorry, one of the 5 Allianz stadiums. To newer fans, people...
The Allianz Eye.
Yeah. To newer fans, people less familiar with it, this is a very intimidating place to play. Yeah. It is... if anybody else...
But will there be thousands of these maybe Johnny-come-lately Bristol fans who are making the trip?
Good question. Here's the thing. Whether good or bad, her fan base is not centralized. She wasn't in Bristol long enough that she has this huge Bristol pocket. She just has fans, and a lot of them probably live closer to London than they do Bristol. Especially when I saw people commenting on posts, everyone was saying, "I'm making the trip from Leicester. I'm making the trip from Newcastle. I'm making the trip from Sutton, whatever." London is way easier for them to get to, which is awesome. What's also very important, and that what newer fans might not know, is that Harlequins has a huge fan base. They're very dedicated. In my opinion, in terms of social issues and club ethos, Harlequins has the best. Harlequins is very inclusive. Harlequins grows a lot. Harlequins was the first Pride game.
I was recently told that my fandom of Harlequins in the Prem makes me look like a Tory.
Is problematic. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right because of the players for the men's. But if you think about, so you're absolutely right. There's a stark divide. That's totally fair.
Wow.
But Harlequins women, first of all, very queer team, very players of color team.
Wow.
All of that. Yeah. For me, Harlequins in the modern era is the Benetton ad of which will only work for you and me, and anybody else over everybody else over 35. But no, it's where a bunch of the South Africans play. It's where there's a new pocket of Welsh now that they've gotten Alex Callender. And that's another thing, by the way. If Alex Callender is on the roster for Friday, everything becomes way harder.
By the way, before the holidays, a few months ago, I was like, I have an idea, and I'm going to do this for Julia. I was going to make an Al Cal calendar.
An Al Callender?
An Al Callender calendar. Because how easy would that be to do? I thought, and I was like, she's going to be so surprised when this thing arrives in the mail.
No, I am.
But then I realized it wasn't the price tag. It's that I was sitting there trolling for pictures of Al Cal, and I was like, oh, wait, I'm becoming a weird guy all of a sudden.
Oh, my God, same. Okay, so I'm glad you said that. I have a story, too, and it's gonna harken back to our mutual friends, how we all met, our friends over in the rap family of pods.
Yes.
That was when Celtic Conspiracy started. And that is when we started all of that. And then we made up the Captain Dr. Rachel Malcolm fan club, and we made the mug for her. And then we were like, well, a lot of people are in the Al Cal Shithousery fan club. And so we started having to look for good pictures of her. And I was like, oh, well, we could use the one with she's been a player in the match. And then you start digging for a lot of pictures. And then I was like, oh, now I'm a stalker. Now I'm just stalking her. Why am I 3 years
this is going to change my browsing history. This is going to change what the internet thinks I'm actually looking for.
And also, of course, the always fear of accidentally liking a picture that's 7 years old.
Yeah.
That would be me.
I don't know why I brought up a gift that I didn't give you, so maybe that was stupid.
But that's a fantastic idea, and I don't know why I didn't think of it. All of that is to say,
if there was one, I would buy it. That's all I'm saying.
WRU. I hear you're constantly cash strapped. Anyway, so we've got Quins. That is going to be a challenge in and of itself. I'm going to be completely honest with myself and Bears fans. I think our best case scenario is we would like to come out of that with 2 points. That'd be awesome. If we get the losing bonus point, that would be awesome. It will not necessarily solve the problem because we have 2 things. So Exeter, we have to be judging off of Exeter's math. Exeter has 2 matches. Bears has 1. Exeter's next match is going to be Saracens. I don't think Exeter is going to win that game.
Right, but then they have Tigers.
Where they're going to absolutely come away with 5 points.
Yeah.
No question there. My biggest concern is if Susie Appleby does it right, and if everybody is feeling in the right headspace for Saracens, I do see points. I think they could. I don't think a full strength or even like a 3/4 strength Saracens is at much risk, not from what feels like a beaten down Exeter. The thing about Exeter, and we know this from the past 2 years of the playoff cycle, is that when they're mad, they're like a snake.
Yeah.
They just get mad. And they'll whip around and bite you.
Well,
I don't know.
Glancing at the table quickly, so Sale, they lost again at home to Ealing, 20-33 this weekend. Gloucester Hartbury and Harlequins there at the top, both with an incredible 11 wins. Amazing. Saracens, you already mentioned, they have 10. Your Bears have 9 and are currently 4th. But as we just talked about, they only have 1 game left away against Harlequins. That's a huge game. And by the way, though, I was also looking ahead to the final round, and suddenly it hit me. There's a match between Gloucester Hartbury and Harlequins on February 21st. That might be the biggest regular season game in the short history of the PWR as we know it.
Completely agree.
And the added drama of Bristol having that result hanging over it. How big is that going to be?
I think it's going to be huge. It would be even huger if the outcome mattered to Bristol. It doesn't. But that said, I mean, it would take a whole other several minutes and we need to keep going. But I have so many thoughts and feelings about the new look Harlequins. It feels like if you're a diehard PWR fan, and definitely if you've been following in the longer term, if you've been following since it was Premier 15, since it was Tenants, all the way back, the Quins have had not checkered because it wasn't any of their fault. It's not a checkered past.
Quartered, I think is the term.
Quartered. They've had a quartered past. Absolutely. They had a rough span of coaches who were perhaps
interesting.
Not fit, not ready, or just maybe I don't know, because the talent that they've had has always been there.
As our British fans like to incorrectly say, lackadaisical.
Lackadaisical, yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yes, I have. Oh my God. And can we do one more? We're going to get canceled for this. We're getting canceled from our main fan base, which is UK rugby players. UK rugby listeners, listen, you know what they use wrong all the time? Mercurial. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not going to call out the announcer who is very popular for doing a lot on her announcing, and she knows who she is. Everybody loves your wordplay except me. I find it annoying, but everybody else loves your wordplay. However, you use mercurial wrong. Mercurial is not good. Mercurial means that sometimes you're really great and sometimes you're really bad. Meg Jones is not mercurial. I'm sorry. Somebody was like, she's on a mercurial rise. And I was like, well, that's not good. Do you mean meteoric?
It means she's made of aluminium.
What you mean when you say mercurial, you're trying to say meteoric. Just say meteoric. Meteors.
That is a
mercurial, she comes
that is
back.
A great shout. I had lackadaisical was the one that was eating at my brain. And
lackadaisical kills me, but I just want to be like.
By the way,
are you going to call it?
If you look it up, the internet tells you, a common mistake. That's the first result. It's like anyway.
I know, and also half the time you're not using lackadaisical right anyway, but it doesn't matter.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Oh my God, David, we are not allowed to tell it because we're the colonies. So.
I think we won that war, though. I think at some point that
I thought so too. Speaking of I mean, I should have just told you that off the air, but here we are. Yeah, Hugh yelled at me for talking about the Royals. I think we know a little bit about the Royals.
I refuse to care.
We're
My
not.
mom knows
No,
all about
no,
that.
not your Massachusetts ass. We're not talking about the Royals right now.
Oh no. Um, that's really good. I do have to get your predictions
Yes, please.
down. There's a couple of weekends remaining. Not every team has 2 games left, as we've already alluded to. The top 4 we've already said. Does it stay that way? Or are your Bears making it into the playoffs this year?
Okay, so truly, just right up until I jumped on with you, I've been trying to figure it out. It's going to become literally 1 or 2 points on the table.
Yep.
Is absolutely going to decide it.
And stupid Exeter. Ugh.
And stupid Exeter. So what I think is going to happen right now, and I also want to stress to both Doomers and Gleers, Gleefulers, is I think between when we log off and when we post this and Wednesday or Thursday, it's going to be looking at injuries and sickness for all of the teams still playing in terms of how they perform, because you can always hurt yourself at training and people are going to be training very hard. So what I see right now, assuming that there won't be any huge injury shakeups or, a coach quits out of nowhere, nothing like that, which can happen. Poor Loughborough, they just found out the hard way. What I think is going to happen is I think Bristol is not going to beat Harlequins. I do think it is possible that there could be losing bonus points. I'm confident in a losing bonus point.
But that's not going to be enough.
It's not going to be enough. But I think Exeter is going to lose to Saracens. I am not 100% confident that they can come away with losing bonus points as they are right now. It depends on who comes back, if anybody, and how the team morale is. Exeter is, in my opinion, a rather emotional team, in a good way, honestly. There is a lot of faith in their captain, Poppy Leach. Poppy is a driver the same way Amber Reed is for the Bears. If she's in a good place, it feels like the team does really well.
By the way, if your name is Poppy Leach, you better be damn good at something.
You better be fucking good. And she is. She's so good they made her the head coach of another whole team. She's a very good. If Exeter is there, if Susie Appleby feels that they're there and they have the confidence that they need, the same way that I don't think we can beat Harlequins, I don't think they can beat Saracens, but I think that they can do damage. I think it's almost a given, and if for some reason, Meg Jones, you're listening, please stop listening right now. I do think Tigers are going to get the ass beat off them by a very angry Exeter, because I do think that they will be angry after Saracens.
So is Gloucester Harper winning it all again this year?
So that's a good question. And I would have easily answered yes, just straight away, if Harlequins hadn't had the season that they had.
They surprised me.
They have surprised
they weren't
everybody.
This last year.
They weren't. And I think 2 things happened. One, Ross Chisholm, the head coach, I think has done a lot. And I say that specifically because several players have come and said the coaching has changed the vibe on the team. And I think it might have changed the vibe on the team to the point where they could recruit somebody like Alex Callender, because it's not easy to get her on your team. No, she was happy first of all,
and she's good 365 days a year.
365 days a year. Absolutely. And it would be yet again a tangential conversation, but there have been a few big name Welsh players who have come out recently, and these are conversations about something else, not PWR, but they have come out recently and said, if there was a chance for me to play at the level I need to play in Wales, I would leave the PWR.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And that is why we saw her captain Brith on Thunder. That is why we see Natalia John over there. It's why we see Meg Webb over there. A lot of people who are very committed to growing rugby in Wales. I don't think the same thing is going to be said for Scotland, even though Scotland's championship is even better than Wales. I don't know if it'll be the same thing. However, all of that is said because it is making the Welsh harder to recruit. Hopefully it's also making the Scottish harder to recruit, I hope, because Scotland is doing great at their domestic competition right now. And we know that Ireland, it's very hard to pull girls out of Ireland because of regulations by IRFU. So all of that said, it was a hard playing field for Harlequins to recruit as it was. I think that they recruited smartly. You can tell by who they brought in. I mean, they got some amazing names as well. Obviously, they got Alcal, that's a huge name. They got Claudia Pena, which ended up being being huge.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
Great
she's
show.
a contender for League Player of the Year at the end of all of this.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then when you have the promise of something like Jade Conkle will be your captain, it's not hard. So I don't know.
So you still haven't answered though.
I know, and it's because I'm really trying to bring myself to say I think Gloucester takes it. Yes,
I kind of think so.
I think it's kind of inevitable.
Harlequins would be more exciting. I will be watching. I think that's the final, and I think it's going to be great. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I do, and that is what I keep telling myself is that even if that is the final, and it likely will be, and it will likely be a Gloucester win. I do think that if it's Gloucester Harlequins, it will be a really entertaining match, and I think that it will be a really good test.
The final score will be within 2, not
exactly
14.
I think, and I think that it will be a game that you don't turn off after 60 minutes, which not every PWR match is.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you're talking to somebody who follows the Opiki, so.
Oh, I know. Oh goodness, we can have another episode on that.
So. I'm kind of hitting the fast forward on the rest of my script here. I've been loving the Sevens this year, as always.
Absolutely.
I wondered if you had any sort of outstanding thoughts, anything you wanted to highlight. Like you and I were texting back and forth about Tolliver and Ramsey, but players like Sammy Sullivan, is she going to be back anytime soon? And by the way, if Loughborough and your Bears are out of the playoffs, does that change the complexion of the Sevens squads? Like, even if they make the final, it's a couple of weeks before Hong Kong and then plenty of time before Singapore and LA. Does that change this competition?
Yes. And we know actually because we've seen evidence. I'm not sure if this was extremely recent. Like I saw her in some Rugby Canada social media clips yesterday. Chrissy Scurfield is already back.
Oh,
she's back in Canada already. She's at camp.
Okay.
Yeah, she's already at camp. As soon as they solidified that they were going to be 6th, regardless of the math, she left. Good question. Here is my one catch. And first of all, if Bears don't go to the finals or go to quarterfinals, again, it's up in the air. I'm going to be completely frank with both my friends and people who don't like what I have to say. Even if we do make it to the playoffs, I do not believe that we will go past the semifinals. Okay. So that said, I think Aluna will go back to Sevens, at least briefly.
I mean that's an obvious question. Does she hop right back into the Eagles, or does she go to WER?
Neither. So WER, I don't think any of them are going there for a few years, to be honest. And I will explain why in a sec. However, we know that Alona, and again, this will sound like I'm saying it as a hater thing. I'm not. It's literally what she said. She is at PWR at all because she wants to look for the World Cup, and we are forgetting the World Cup. So what I think is really going to happen is Alev is going to come home with her now fiance Catherine Treader, who is also the starting hooker for the Eagles. I think they're both going to come home and just go straight into 15s camp. Alona is a toss-up. It depends on how charitable my reading of her intentions are. If it's charitable, it's that she goes to 15s camp because she really needs to learn and she needs to integrate with the team she's never played with before. Nobody on the 15s knows her. They've never played with her, and this is something that I feel like is a reason why she can't just be parachuted into the team. But that said, if that's not what happens, obviously she would go straight back on the 7th circuit. Otherwise, I think. So I think about, and this is all kind of like inside baseball-y type stuff, but like Kate Zach moved to the Trailfinders because her wife got a job in London. She can't just leave. Her wife said, "You've been doing this so many years.
Yeah.
We need to be together again. We can't just be apart all the time. You can't keep changing teams and continents all the time." Charlie Jacoby is now playing for the Queensland Reds with her partner, Lori Kramer. As far as I can tell, in terms of what the Queensland Reds have put out, is that she's looking at, well, Charlie is re-signed. So as soon as she's done with Exeter, her contract says she goes back to Australia, which she wants to do. All of that are all in the intention of making the Eagles team. But in terms of when all of that happens, we don't have the Six Nations window the way they do. So there's a lot of time where you decide what it wants to do with, what you want to do with your time. I don't know. I would really hope that, actually, no, I've talked myself into a corner. I was going to say, I'd hope that 11 Alona I would hope that 11 Alona like make another appearance on the 7th Circuit, I guess. But also, I'm totally happy if they don't, because of my answer to your original question. I will now answer your original question, which is, I have been shocked and delighted by the other sevens girls.
Yeah.
The new ones,
sevens,
the ones who are coming
Eagles.
back. Absolutely. I mean, we know
Perth
that
was not great. Perth started out well.
Perth wasn't amazing,
but
Perth
but I'm
wasn't
okay with
amazing.
That.
Perth is also never amazing for us. Well, I guess except that one time, but that was kind of an outlier. Anyway, yeah, I usually would have a really good answer.
My son knew that Maddie Levi had broken her thumb before I did, and I think my job as a parent.
He's on the socials.
Yeah. No, he's not, and yet somehow he knew. He's 8.
He was like, I could tell. No, good. Do not.
Well, we kind of already mentioned it. The PWR is theoretically a month away from starting.
WBR.
What did I just call it?
PWR. I was like, girl, I wish. Yes, it is theoretically. And you have my favorite.
I've bought my merch.
Oh my gosh,
I've
stoked.
got the logo up there. The Boston Banshees. I can't wait.
It's a great logo. Great.
I haven't seen where any of these games might be played.
So,
like, I feel like I'm in on a very, very grassroots level thing, and I feel really good about that. Like, if we've got a lot of college campuses around here, and they play rugby there. If I have to go to Brandeis to watch my Banshees, I'm going.
It will actually probably be Harvard or it will probably be Cambridge. Well, so this is again half guess, half picked up on clues by the people who are involved with WER. Fortunately, I just, in my many years of being involved in American rugby, found out that I have friends who are now involved in it. Made me happy. I've been plying them for information. And the answer, it sounds like, is going to be, as with kind of everything else so far, pretty much aligned with WPL, which exists now, which is the Women's Premier League here in America. Yep. It's amateur. It'll probably be wherever Beantown plays, to be honest. Okay. I forget where their home pitch is, but I know
was
that
just about to embarrassingly admit I don't know the answer to that.
I know.
My good friend Jan Rutkowski, American Eagle Hall of Famer, is a Beantown lifer.
Yeah, and we need
Beantown than the USA, and I don't know where they play.
Well, if we had Ben from Fantasy Rugby Yanks, he would come tell us.
Oh, yeah.
As he coaches over there. But no, I just realized I don't know. However, the reason that
joining us now.
Oh, Ben. No, the reason that I make that guess is because Harvard, I know, has state-of-the-art facilities. I mean, half of the foundational 5 for the Banshees are Harvard. Yep.
Got some BU
so
in there.
Guess.
Got some my partner's alma mater in there.
Absolutely. I mean, and definitely for UK folks and other folks who aren't that familiar with what we would have considered grassroots to amateur women's rugby here in America, Massachusetts in general, David's area and Boston is truly, in my opinion, probably, other than the headquarters in Denver, is probably the biggest rugby hub in America.
It is, and I was again. I keep name dropping these people,
Yeah.
but Dr. Tony Collins,
Yep.
rugby historian,
Yep.
he really explicitly explained how rugby started in the elite schools in the UK, and so the people who brought it over to the
Brought
New
the Ivy League.
World were the same people, and so it planted in Dartmouth and Harvard. And
I was just gonna say, if we look at the announced or the declared player pool for people who want to be considered for the Banshees, they are heavily Dartmouth, Harvard, MIT.
yeah, I'm a Free Jacks supporter, and
Yep.
it's all about Dartmouth.
Oh yeah, yeah. I keep saying this throughout, but that could also be its complete own conversation. Thrilled with how well colleges are doing right now for women's rugby, especially, but really across the board for rugby. The college development has been rapidly scaled up, and in a good way.
By the way, how good is the Banshees logo? Like
The Banshees logo is fantastic. Hey, look,
I've got a hoodie on the way and a T-shirt on the way.
The Banshees is probably my favorite. To be honest, I really like the Exiles whole vibe. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The Twin Cities is so smart and dope, but I really do just want to, I want to take the moment to, just talk a little bit about that. They worked with the MATA agency, which is out in London, and it is the same agency that does branding for the Red Roses and for the Saracens, I believe. But the women's rugby head is it's Flo Williams. I was like, Flo Long, that's Exeter. Flo Williams, who played for the Wasps and also played for the Saracens. She is also a branding and creative type person. She came over to America, learned about all of the WPL teams, which now have become WER. Spent a bunch of time in England studying
PWR.
Spent a bunch of time. Sorry, I just said PWR and I was wrong too. Spent a bunch of time studying the WNBA and the PWHL launch, which, as you can see, if you are familiar, if you were familiar in America with the PWHL launch, you will notice that this is going very similarly.
There's buzz.
There's buzz. It's a rollout rather than a dump. Yeah. There are a lot of smart moves being made, but what I really liked was it. And I've felt this way about WER across the board. There have been legitimate complaints and conversations about how it seems kind of that they're building the plane as they fly it. Yeah, probably. That's America. That's what it's what we do.
I mean, we invented that.
We really did, though. But I have explained this to our UK friends, and I don't have a really great way of explaining it, but I think you'll understand my way. American sports, especially American women's sports, and I think that this is kind of just a testament to kind of how we think in terms of business and advertising and building a fan base. We are not afraid of throwing money at an idea that only might work. Yep. It is of course a comment that often it's wrong or bad and it doesn't succeed and we've wasted a lot of money. It's true that most other places can't do that. But I do consider it a testament that we constantly are like, well, try it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's how you get stuff like PWHL.
My pal Bill Baker, he just on the USA Rugby Happy Hour, he interviewed the guy with World Rugby who's in charge of the next two of our World Cups, the 31 and 33.
Yep.
And that was one of the most insightful things the guy mentioned, that like Americans are prepared. It's a consumer society, and we're prepared to pay for our sports. So if the ticket price is $20, you don't think you're going to get the Super Bowl. You don't expect, but we want to give them the Super Bowl. So it is going to cost more. And so like the connection between price points and expectations, like it's a whole different animal in America, and like it really got me fired up though. Long story short, it was a great pod, and I'm like, oh,
absolutely.
And the fact that the Women's Cup in 33 will be 2 years after, that's just the right amount of time to fix the things that they screw up in 31.
It absolutely is, and that's one of the many things that I've actually gotten questions along those lines, especially from our UK friends, European friends, and very fair questions from folks in Australia and New Zealand, considering they've recently held or are about to hold Rugby World Cups, are you worried about what might happen with USA 31 and 33? And the answer is like, yeah, sure. Only insofar as they're correct when they say that we aren't a traditional rugby nation. But the thing about the USA, and it's true about Canada, but we aren't talking about them. But the thing about USA in terms of sports in general, but definitely about women's sports and women's sports being the moment right now. I don't care if it's true or not. I don't care if it's a gimmick. Give us the money.
Sure.
They are.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, no, I'm not that worried about it. It might not be exactly what you want. It might not be a traditional Rugby World Cup the way that you know it. Good. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see it as kind of the same thing about not liking Alona's answer, that like, that's not how we do it. It's like, okay, but there can be more than one way to do it.
Yeah.
And if there is another way,
another thing I just learned is the 94 Soccer World Cup, not a soccer nation over here, the most highly attended of all time soccer World Cups. Like, we still have that record. Like, there's precedent.
We still know.
I'm feeling
know how to make a like, are you kidding?
Right.
We still know how to put on a show. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that as long as we capitalize on that, which, by the way, which is one of the reasons why I feel so confident about WAR, is because it feels like so far they are not afraid to like catch a wave and ride it.
Yeah.
No, I would really, honestly, I would worry more about both the World Cups we're about to host and about the launch of WER if it felt like they were being, if it felt like they were being shy, if it felt like they were kind of, not anxious, but they felt like they weren't ready.
It's our chance to be aggressive, and that's what we're good at. So let's do it.
Exactly. No, that's a very succinct, good way of saying it.
So I want to get us out of here. Final little bit.
Please.
Pop quiz, hot shot.
Yeah.
Over the past 10 years, how many teams on average do you figure have competed in the Six Nations tournament?
What? I don't understand.
The answer's 6. I know.
Oh, okay. I was like, do you mean like how many amalgamations of a team? I'm like, a lot.
I've pulled that on several people over the last few years,
and
every single time. I don't know why I keep doing it, because the answer is always, is this guy an idiot? Like,
what do you mean? Well, no, I thought you were asking me if like I knew that it used to be 5 nations. I'm like, yes, I knew.
I know. That's the thing, is that when I first wrote that joke like 3 years ago, it seemed like a stupid joke, and everyone's like, well, technically, in 2000, Italy. Wait, are the home nations?
They're worried that you think they don't know.
I know.
They don't know maps.
It creates people are more concerned for me instead of laughing.
I do. Well, I thought that you were worried that I didn't know that it used to be less. I did.
So we actually did talk about this before we started actually recording. I do know the answer to the question: are you watching the men's Six Nations? On a bunch of pods, they've been talking about the new season of Full Contact, which I think should be called Full Cringe. So I thought I was.
So does everybody I've talked to.
I thought I was very clever, and I sent you a message saying, you know what? If they missed the mark, if they had picked the women's Six Nations, they'd have a good show, because it would have people with like personalities who are interested in expressing themselves. And you were like, yeah, that's all we've been talking about on my other text.
I've genuinely heard that from a lot of people that I wouldn't have expected it from. Not because they're mean or anything, but just because they're not usually people who have strong feelings about women's. But the one thing, and actually we have touched on it throughout this episode, is that there is a big difference between like the interaction between women's rugby players and their public, and the men and their public. Yeah. And you and I were texting when you were watching it, and it just, I don't know how you managed to do this, because even though I tease and kind of poo-poo a little bit on like some of the men's social content, it's usually not this bad. You made this guy seem like an asshole.
Yeah, I liked Marcus Smith before this show. It's supposed to make him a superstar, and now I don't like him anymore.
No, Marcus Smith is the main one, but they did the job on a few. But
also, they did the super crappy thing where they're like, they talked to Duhan and they're like, oh, is that a Scottish accent? And it's like, where's the interview with James Lowe? Where's the interview with Jamison Gibson Park? Like,
no, that's the thing.
Would you all shut up about it?
Don't make it weird.
It's so strange.
There are a lot of instances, and I admit that I've only watched a few of them, because of course we got it late. But honestly, I know it sounds flip, but that was kind of my first takeaway. Was just like, you don't have to be weird about it. You don't have to make this uncomfortable. You made this uncomfortable, and now I don't feel like good watching it.
I had a funny thought. Like if they acted like the word "bro" was a swear and they beeped it, imagine what the show would look like.
Yeah, I
boop,
guess
beep, it's
oh,
boop.
gosh.
It's boop boop.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to make something interesting out of even something that's only kind of interesting. You didn't do it this time.
So if you and I get our wish and they because Netflix very understandably was like, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. This sucks.
Didn't work.
And it's like, yeah, it does. You're right. Don't do it. But if they switch and they do the Women's Six Nations, obviously each episode they pick a nation and they kind of highlight a person.
Yeah.
They foolishly picked Louis Rees-Zammit
Right.
last time and now
It's
they're
chasing
butchering Marcus Smith. But if they do it right and they do the women's, give me your highlighted players for
and we
the
do want
Six
to
Nations.
yeah,
And I'm
we do
talking
want to
very
focus
slowly because I sprung this on you, and I want you to have a sec to think about it. Who is going to be the person they highlight for England? Obviously, they're going to pick Ellie Kildun, but maybe there's somebody better.
I was going to
Who are
say
they gonna
Ellie
pick for Scotland.
Yeah, so Ellie would be kind of the one that you'd think of. But to be honest, and I know that this is also
You can start with Wales for sure.
Okay, Wales would be Alcal. I mean, that's the whole package.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do believe, we've been talking about it on my other podcast, and among ourselves and among other Wales diehards. There's whatever. I'm gonna get flayed no matter what. Yes, Sean Lynn is currently Hannah Jones's coach. Hannah Jones is the current captain of Wales. She's not a good captain. I do think that even Sean Lynn will realize that it has to be Alcal. So I do think it will be Alcal. Although there are a few options, so I will actually do that for all the teams. I think a dark horse left field for Wales could be Donna Rose, who just had a baby. She didn't have the baby; her partner had the baby.
That's good. That's good content.
Yeah, really good content, especially because Donna is a Saracen, which everybody loves. So there's all of that. Let's see. Actually, this is great, and I'm actually pretty ready for. So Italy, I think it would probably.
I was
have
like,
to
I'm
be,
totally springing this on her. Oh wait, she's gonna be prepared. She
I'm
will
totally
have
prepared.
had this conversation with people and in her head, falling asleep.
In my head, I absolutely have. No, actually, this will be premium content for some people who I haven't told this to yet. For Italy, easily it would be Beatrice Arrigoni.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean she's playing in England, so they're already familiar with her. She has personality for days, and also speaks English and Italian and French and a bunch of other languages. So,
yep.
Bea Arrigoni for sure. Sophia Stefan maybe could be a backup. Let's see. For France, I think it would be really smart to do the Ménager twins.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
I was kind of making like a half-assed list, and that wasn't even. Oh, man, you just nailed it.
Yeah, Ménager twins. Or Pauline Bourdon-Sansu and Laure Sansu, her coach at home.
Didn't know that. Okay. Sansu fan didn't know that.
Yeah, so Pauline Bourdon married Laure Sansu. Laure Sansu, who was the captain, or who was the scrum half, rather, not captain, was the captain and scrum half. Pauline took over for scrum half when Laure retired. Laure is now the coach at Toulon, where Pauline plays.
Wow.
Toulouse, not Toulon. Sorry, Toulouse. Anyway, so either of those would be great. The added bonus being that Pauline Bourdon seems to be buddies with Antoine Dupont. They do a lot of media hits together. They're at the same club as well. And they're both star French scrum halves. So Pauline would be easy if you wanted that crossover. So for England, I do think Ellie Kildun would be probably the default that they would go for, which is fine. Just I understand.
If she gets a massive haircut, does she fall off the radar?
I know. If she gets a haircut, fine. But also, she's very good at rugby. But in terms of personality, it's a lot of people are like Ellie. She just doesn't have. In my opinion, the most interesting would be Hannah Botterman. For a lot of reasons. Hannah Botterman, for a lot of reasons, would also talk about mental health stuff. That'd be awesome. Could talk about being out your whole life on a team where it wasn't always the best. All of that. Let's see. So we've done Wales, Italy, France, England. Now we've got Scotland and Ireland. Scotland, the easy answer would be Jade Conkle because she's a fireman.
Because they can go to the life footage.
Yeah. And also because she's the captain and because everybody loves her. And she's got a lot of tattoos and is cool.
And the obvious final answer is Aoife Wafer. It's got to be, right?
For Ireland, Aoife Wafer would be good. Absolutely. I don't know if she's actually kind of shy as a person.
Oh, okay.
She's not a big chatter. It's why she's not in a lot of interviews. It's just the experience we've seen so far. Obviously, you'd want her for the star power for sure. Aoife Wafer would be my pick because I want to know more about her. But in terms of like making good TV, honestly, I would have said Adele McMahon. She is the captain. She's funny. She's always got a one-liner. She's really good in Exeter hits.
I haven't heard her talk. Does she have a nice thick accent too?
Yeah, she's a farm girl.
Oh, there we go.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And who would be the coach?
For Ireland, also Cleena Maloney, obviously.
Oh yes.
If we want funny, okay.
But for the added content, which coach would you be most looking forward to hearing what they have to say about their squad?
Scott Beamond.
Oh, nice.
Because
left field, I like that.
Because according to the girls themselves, when they've been asked directly and also when they've been written about by third-party outlets, the overwhelming opinion is that getting rid of Nusafora and Beamond coming in is what changed everything for Ireland women, is what brought several women back. It's what brought Cleena Maloney back after the blacklist.
We talked about this, the sort of enigma that is Nusafora, where it's like everyone who gets rid of him is like, thank God, and yet somebody's like, oh, we're so
thank
happy
God he's
we've
here.
got Nusafora. It's very strange. He's like,
it is very strange.
That job. I want everyone to hate me when I leave and be really excited to give me a better paying job.
It is, but if we were to look at men really briefly, I'm thinking of two coaches in men's that also kind of have the same. I'm thinking of Warren Gatland.
It's over for him, right? Like
it's over, and yet you can't get rid of him.
The reason he's not quitting is because he's stubborn. If he quits, they won't be obligated to give him the rest of his salary. So he's going to take the rest of the salary because he can't get another job after this, right? It's over.
Everyone keeps saying that, and yet he keeps getting employed. The same as my other answer, which is Eddie Jones. Everyone keeps saying that, but he keeps getting employed. I know, right? So there's got to be something we don't know. But I just hope.
I don't think there's something we don't know. It reminds me of New York, where people who move to New York are like, they hate it, and they're like, oh my God, this is the worst. It's like a crappy city. It's dirty and it's dangerous.
It's like Kermit the Frog said.
But I'm paying twice as much to be here, so I shouldn't be the only one who suffers. So they start telling all their friends, you should move to New York.
Yeah. It's like Kermit the Frog said, it's a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there.
Kermit.
That's kind of how I feel about somebody like Gatland, honestly.
The people I really respect who love Wales posted things about it's Gatmas on the day that he was rehired, and me sitting in my little silo here was like, really? Because you were not happy with him when you ran him out of town on a rail last time.
Correct.
And,
I've been seeing the same conversation. I don't know why it's so much. I don't know why it's so much around Australians, but I've been seeing the same narrative around Cheka.
I've heard some Australian talk. Maybe we should get Cheka. I'm like,
what? Who you fucking hated last time? What do you?
How long is your memory?
I was going to say sometimes I think they just like to suffer. So no, I think honestly, you know what? That could be a really good point if you were to make a full contact about women. Would be drawing those. I was going to say parallels, but anti-parallel. By the time they actually make that show,
Cheka will be the coach of one of these days.
Will be the coach of one of these days. We joke, but thank God it won't be Wales women because oh my God, we were worried for a while.
Yeah.
Listen, we get one nice thing a calendar year, and ours this time was Sean Lynn.
Wales men, they scored points this weekend. That happened.
Okay.
So.
Okay. You'd hope.
Rugby Julia, you are the best. This has been so much fun. I've kept you much longer than I anticipated. I can hear the ire and anger descending upon me through the basement.
Your family is saying, "Where are you?" And so probably is mine, but I'm not even listening.
I think my best friend is probably here too to get ready for the Super Bowl.
Oh my God, that's right.
Which I should have been
we're gonna
making
have to
food
text.
for. So
we're gonna have to text too.
But when will the wrap? It's not the wrap anymore. It's the women's rugby treehouse. A title I like, by the way. Really good.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I don't get it, but I still like it because who doesn't love a treehouse?
I don't get it either. I don't get it necessarily, but Hugh made it up, and then I like retrofitted it with a response, and it's that when all the men get together to talk about rugby, they don't want the women around, so they banish them to the treehouse. I'm making it up.
We should be so lucky.
Right?
It is, no matter what it is, it's better than me saying the rap, not the one with the two W's, but the one with the two.
Oh, I know, and that was our goal.
Yes. So. And who, like I said, who doesn't love a treehouse? So when is the next one? We after
good question.
Bantering, I didn't mention.
Good question. It's going to be pretty soon. We are probably going to do it. We're hoping during either quarters or semis for PWR.
Oh, okay, nice.
So soon. Honestly, it's on me for Women's Rugby Treehouse says I was moving.
As I'm constantly reminding him, Hugh hates all people in the Southern Hemisphere, especially New Zealanders. Correct. So y'all aren't gonna cover Super Rugby W or the OPK? No?
I'm gonna make us. No. The only reason that we don't talk about it more is just because it doesn't. A lot of our time zones don't allow for it, and apparently it's really painful to find a way to watch it in the UK. But it's not for me, so I'm gonna bring it in.
Yeah, it's really easy here.
Yeah.
In this rugby loving nation. Yeah, it's really easy for us.
I know more about using a VPN than like several intelligence agencies.
Julia, my friend, you're the absolute best. I really appreciate your time. It's so good to see you in the new year. We got to do this again and again and again.
Absolutely.
I don't even know what's the best next one after the PWR. I want to get Alice Soper back to do an OPK preview, but that's
could I?
That's really, really soon.
I know.
There's the LA Sevens finals. There's Olympics.
There are a lot of good.
That's way. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. There are a lot of good.
Nobody's gonna be talking about the WER, and you and I can talk about it.
We are. Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. Actually, what I was going to say is it all depends on the timeline, because as soon as we know more about the teams, you and I will want to get together.
Yeah. Also, it always bothers me that there's no sevens tournaments in and around Boston. So I just looked it up, and there are some. In fact, one of the oldest rainbow cups.
I was like, I didn't know.
There's some great things coming this summer. As soon as it gets warm out,
absolutely.
It feels like there's sevens tournaments, and there's inclusive, diverse, gay-oriented sevens tournaments. I'm going to be there. I really want to make that a thing.
Excellent. And if you do, and if timing works out, we can talk about it offline, but I would absolutely love to hang out with you.
And the invite still is open for the first 4 Free Jacks games, so just let me know anytime.
It's on my schedule. I'll let you know.
My son doesn't want to go. It's too loud. He likes baseball where everything's quiet, nobody stands up, and nobody's shouting. They're all like, he likes that. He doesn't like the
That's all right. We'll get him. We'll get him sometime.
We'll get him. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I love it.
The best.
Can't wait to talk to you again soon.
For sure. Cheers, my friend. Talk to you soon, and be well.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it does, Nate.
You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?